Hi, folks. Welcome to Monday's edition of the I Write Radio podcast stroke videocast. No Stuart today. He's preparing for an interview with Deirdre Brock tomorrow. So that'll be something a bit different for you tomorrow. We're going to have a look at sort of the big Scottish story, which is, well, the story that the mainstream media want to be the biggest story is education, which ties into the 2 metre, 1 metre rule. I've got a couple of clips which reminds us of where we were at the beginning of this and who is in charge at Westminster and what one of the few people who I think I've got a bit of respect for in the Tory party, Ken Clarke, thinks about them. So, Jimmy, you wanted a wee word about education.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming this is all off the back of John Swinney's interview on Gordon Brewer's programme yesterday, but a seriously coordinated campaign by BBC Scotland and the Tory party in Scotland. They all came out attacking policy that isn't quite formed yet. What Swinney was saying yesterday is basically a framework that they're working to have schools in a certain position by August and working throughout the year to get back to normal schooling as soon as possible. But we had all kinds of tweets this morning from various Tories attacking that policy, which isn't really a policy as yet. We had a lassie on Good Morning Scotland on the radio, Alison Payne, who was presented as working for a think tank, but it was more important that she's a parent, and it was her views as a parent that were sought. Never once was it mentioned that she'd worked for the Conservative Party in Scotland. Never once was it mentioned that she was Annabel Goldie's chief speechwriter.
Aye.
So when she was bumping out all these Tory bullet points, it was meant to be as if that was a normal member of the Scottish electorate that was bumping out said bullet points. But as I say, I mean, it's noticeable Nicola kind of clarified things in her presser the day, presumably knowing where the questions were going to come from. But the one thing I noticed this morning, not one Conservative politician had anything to say about gangs of unionists roaming around George Square all weekend looking for a fight. Because let's be clear, that's what they were. They're gangs of unionists. To use the word loyalists is to hide behind loyalism. These are union supporters who are out looking to cause trouble, and the Tory party don't want to slate them because that's their core support.
Well, I was watching the clips of George Square.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one particular clip where a guy's cycling along and 4 or 5 of them run across as if to attack him, has to get off his bike. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and there was these pockets of wee Stramashes and the police would rush across. I mean, frankly, the police should have had a huge presence there and kettled them.
Yeah, I'm looking at that thinking the police went soft touch and hoping that any offences that were committed yesterday, these guys are going to get lifted in the next 2 or 3 mornings.
That's true.
It's easier just to go and get them at 6 o'clock in the morning than it is to try and, you know, wrestle one fat loyalist into the back of a van when you've got another 30 fat loyalists trying to stop you wrestling them into the back of the van. But I genuinely hope that some of these guys, because there were offences committed, and if those were people from black and ethnic minority backgrounds throwing things at the police, can you imagine how many stories would have, I mean, it would have been front page news this morning, mate. It would have been all over every Scottish paper. It would never have been off the news. Because these are white Scottish people, it's kind of ignored.
If you remember the clash after the referendum, it was both sides were at fault. Whereas in fact, it was only the unionist side that was at fault. They were the ones being aggressive.
I didn't care how both sides were at fault after the referendum, mate, because there were only unionists in the square that night. Remember, there was 2 lassies holding a flag and they got attacked.
Aye,
a
well,
Scotland flag.
kind of the point. Well, there was more than that.
Mm.
I mean, it is strange because, I mean, the thing that will always stick in my head is the anti-fascists.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that it's incredible that our papers are not prepared. Our journalists are not prepared to call a spade a spade. They're not prepared to tag these people with what they actually are. And the kids seem to fall into three groups: football hooligans,
Mm-hmm.
far-right hooligans, and Brexit hooligans. That's what it looked like.
Yeah,
But we
well,
don't know because it's not reported.
it would have been interesting to get a look on some of their. It'd be interesting to see if somebody's had a look at some of their message boards and that and find out who was behind all this. But you're right. I mean, it's particularly because it's Glasgow. You've got a section of the Rangers support that turned out there pretending to defend a war memorial. Defend a war memorial against who?
There were no
No, I
one
mean,
near
that
the
was
war
just an
memorial.
absolute. I know, but it was just a nonsense. Nobody's going to attack a war memorial. Nobody's going to attack the statue of Robert Peel and pull it down in Glasgow. That's just not going to happen.
It looked like the only people defending any statues were the regular jakies on the seats at the front of them.
Aye, beat it, son. This is my normal Sunday afternoon jaunt.
And I noticed they weren't picking on them because they would have
Well,
got back in the mouth.
as I say, I wasn't disappointed in the Tories because I fully expected it, but I'm kind of annoyed that the Scottish press just go along with that and buy into their campaign about education this morning. I mean, the other thing about the Tory campaign is not one of them, not a single one, mentions the one thing that would actually help massively reboot education in Scotland, which is a huge influx of cash. We've not got the facilities to have 30 kids in a classroom. If we're going to go to 10 to 15 children in a classroom, what's the quickest way to do it? Ram a pile of porta cabins in every school playground in Scotland. And you can only do that by spending money. The reason the Tories didn't suggest that is because at that point you then say to them, well, can we have borrowing powers? Or can we have full fiscal autonomy, please? And they didn't want that question being asked.
Well, the other big one that Jackson Carlos moved on to at the moment is our high streets. Remember those vibrant, bursting at the seams high streets that he was complaining about before coronavirus because they weren't vibrant and bursting? And as usual, there's no plan from the Tories.
No,
because if they produce a plan, it's got to be costed. And the only way you pay for it is by hiking taxes, and Tories didn't hike taxes.
I see that nippy bugger that he is has swiped my idea about councils just abolishing any permits or charges for outdoor spaces, which is annoying. I hate a Tory blagging any idea. But his other one about banning car parking charges for the summer, that's just stupid. The councils are cash strapped as it is, and they kind of make an awful lot of money out of parking, particularly in the central belt. They need that influx of cash.
Well, do you know, Jimmy, I don't have a problem with that. I'd like to see all parking, multi-storey car parks included. So private enterprises no being allowed to charge either. That'll no be what the Tories are asking for.
No, just the councils to stop it.
Aye.
I just find that if there's no parking restrictions, I mean, it might work in smaller rural communities, but it's chaos in city centres, mate. If there's no, you see yourself, Sunday afternoon, if there's no parking restrictions, which there aren't at the moment in Edinburgh, people just park wherever they like. They park in bus stops, taxi ranks, everywhere.
Well,
if you turn around and say there's no charging in Edinburgh and Glasgow for the next 6 months, you're just going to have unbelievable congestion. Well,
in Edinburgh, it's great because it's so expensive to park in George Street, I can get a parking space. And, you know, I'm struggling to walk these days, but if I need to go somewhere, parking is so expensive. It's going to have to be a good reason to go, and I can get parked, which I must try and get a disabled sticker, actually.
You probably can get one, no bother, mate. Aye, right now. I'm sitting looking at things like the BBC coverage of England shops opening up and It's all very exciting for them. Woohoo! Flags and bonnets and all that nonsense. But the reality is, they're talking about shops opening, mate. They're talking about what you're going to buy, what you're going to spend your money on. They're not asking them questions like, are you worried there might be a second occurrence of this virus? Because they've just decided, this government, that 1,500 new cases a day in England is an acceptable number, and everybody can just go back to normal now.
Well, I've seen it coming for a couple of weeks, as I've said on here several times. It's the economy, stupid, and to hell with the coffin makers. I've noticed as well that all the arguments now, all the questions put to Nicola Sturgeon now are about the 2 metre rule, education, everything that England's decided to do in front of us. And they're desperate for her to make that decision before any evidence comes out that it was the wrong decision in England.
Well, they were desperate to push her a few weeks back, to push her into a route map, a footpath out of this thing. And when she came up with one, with a 4-phase route map, they didn't like it because it was science-based, it was evidence-based, and they were like, the press in general, but particularly some of them were like, oh, hold it, wait a minute here. Well, this actually looks sensible. This looks like you've thought about it and came up with a plan. And that makes England look bad. So can we not go back to the point where you wouldn't come out with one?
Well, the other thing about it is the plan, I wouldn't say it was evidence-based. I would have said it was based on waiting for evidence. Because the reality is, if we stay around about 3 weeks behind England with their coming out of lockdown decisions, we'll have a much better idea how it's going to affect us, because it will have affected England. And she can't come out and say that, but for me, that's not a bad idea.
Well, she could come out and
if they want to experiment with them, let them go ahead.
Yeah, well, certainly some of the experiments in England have failed miserably, mate. You look at the transmission rate, and as I say, in the northwest and the northeast, it's not great. I've
got a clip here that I should really send to Jackson Carlo. This is from the start of March. A report on Sky, I think it was. There's a sec. Just nearly there.
First week of March, the government is still refusing to take any drastic measures.
Boris Johnson doesn't want to curtail the liberties of British citizens. It's Nicola Sturgeon, for instance, who's pushing to take further, more draconian steps. He's resisting, and so Britain inches forward with its response rather than taking great leaps. You can see the tension in Boris Johnson in some of the interviews he gives. I spoke to him on March the 5th. And there, he was insistent that it was not the right time for Britain to change the way that it does things. It's business as usual, he said to me.
Jackson Carlo's going to be sick of seeing that tweet, because every time he tweets, I'm going to drop it in to his time.
Oh, quite right, mate. Well, they were thinking business as usual, and now they're desperate to get... I mean, business as usual. Geez, it's not like the UK economy was soaring ahead of the world or anything, you know what I mean? But we're looking, and we still are looking down the barrel at absolute chaos in December, a no-deal Brexit. So just to say business as usual in the economy, it forgets to point out how many jobs we were looking at losing. I suppose we'll not lose so many jobs with Brexit because we'll have already lost them with the pandemic, but that doesn't make Brexit any better.
You can hear it now in the comments. But coronavirus. But coronavirus. Meanwhile, at Holyrood, Jackson Carlo will be standing up and you'll be prefacing every question he asks with and didn't you go blaming coronavirus, Nicola? You know, it's going to be a hypocrisy fest.
Yeah, it will feed beautifully into the campaign for the 2021 elections in Scotland, mate, because even if, and God only knows, I hope not, but even if there is some kind of resurgence, even a minor one in autumn, winter, the Scottish election will go ahead. And I'll predict now, just looking at the polls, I think 70 seats might be a bit much, given that there's only 73 constituencies, but there'll not be a kick in the arse off it, eh?
I mean, if everything goes as is, unless there's a major catastrophe, she's played this really well, Nicola. Talking about which, I do have another clip that I'd like to show here. This is Ken Clarke, who is one of those rare beasts in the Tory party that I actually have a bit of time for.
Yeah.
Describing the quality or lack of in the present cabinet. It's quite long. It's about a minute 40 seconds, but it's worth
because of all the upheavals. I remember at the end of the last Parliament was like there were constant coups and counter coups. All the parties were split. Seemed to have a reshuffle about every 6 months. Somebody got fired every now and again. The one thing about the present cabinet is they're all extremely inexperienced compared with what is normally the process by which people have come through before they've got in. So some people are in very big jobs when they haven't really got experience of doing a serious political executive job in their lives before. And it shows sometimes. And I also think the crisis has sort of gripped them, and they're funny. They're rather tense when they appear. They're not. I don't think the messaging has been particularly forceful or particularly clear. And I realise I'm drifting into the old boy saying, "Oh, it's not what it was in my day," and all that sort of thing. I think these men and women most of whom I remember when they were very, very junior people, working in somebody's office or something. This will make or break them. As it goes on, I think their colleagues, as well as the public, will begin to realise some of them are up to it, some of them are getting into it, some of them are getting better, and we'll make allowances for the fact that this is a hell of a crisis. Everybody's going to make mistakes when there's so much unknown about it. And others, I think, it will break them.
I think he's looking too far in the future. I think some of them are already broken. I
think the health secretary is broken. I think the foreign secretary is broken. And having watched, I paid close attention to Rishi Sunak on Mar yesterday, and paid a bit of attention as well to how other people believed he performed. And folk are kind of, they're making allowances for the fact that he's young and what have you. But to be honest, mate, he come across beautifully yesterday, but he come across beautifully because the whole press has lionised him for spending hundreds of billions of pounds to try and protect jobs. He didn't have an option other than to do that. He's the most socialist Tory Chancellor in history. And when those socialist clothes that he's pulled on disappear, he'll still be a Tory Chancellor, which automatically makes him an absolute louse, in my opinion. He'll try and find ways to drag this money back, and he'll no drag it back out the rich. And he'll no drag it back out of big corporations with tax increases. He will drag it back out of the people that work for a living.
That's the real test, is the reaction once it's over and has to be paid for. It's how they choose to do that. And it's going to be really difficult. I mean, if they stick to their manifesto pledges, which this is an ideal get-out clause for them, but if they stick to that idea of, huge infrastructure projects, turning the red wall permanently blue in the north of England, if they stick to that, there's going to be even more borrowing.
Yeah, I think the borrowing, even if Brexit's only half as bad as we think it is, if we have a no-deal Brexit, they'll be borrowing for decades to try and cover it.
Well,
and it'll just have to be the case that they'll just at some point they'll have to dismiss 20th century economic thinking altogether and just say, do you know what? As a sovereign monetary state, we're just going to keep creating liquidity and hope that we can dig ourselves out of this in some way, shape, or form at some point in the future.
Well, somebody made a good point when they said that they should treat it like you do war debt.
Write it off or pay it off over 50, 100 years.
Yeah, spread it over 70, 80 years, which would because doing it that way makes no difference to the cycle. You still get your bus and booms. It'll look the same to most people, and the Tories will get to keep their market economy.
And they would get the support of Labour to push it through Parliament, because at some point Labour will win an election, and they didn't want to have to be paying it back in one electoral term either.
I worry that, as Ken Clark said, the lack of experience, I thought, was a polite way of saying they're a bunch of right-wing nutters.
Well, there's also the thing that folk forget about. Again, as I say, Sunak's getting this golden boy treatment for the press and that, mate. But don't forget, this is a man who accepted the chancellorship on terms that the previous chancellor found unacceptable. He's Chancellor of the Exchequer. Normally that gives you massive power within the government, but he doesn't have any of his own backroom staff around him. Dominic Cummings chooses his aides. So Dominic Cummings, effectively, is running the Treasury, because Boris Johnson's got the nous to be doing that. It's Dominic that's doing it.
I did get a distinct impression that Sunak is positioning himself for a future challenge. I don't think he would be stupid enough to go for it next time, but the time after that, I think his name will be on the ballot paper.
Yeah, and as I say, in normal times, Chancellor would be not a shoe-in, but he'd certainly be the leading contender if anything happened to a leader. But as I say, mate, he doesn't have any experience at all. And he does have a backroom staff that reports to somebody above him, which no Chancellor's had in the past. So we'll see.
Anything else strike you particularly this weekend? Did you read Ruth Wishart's piece in The National?
I didn't. I read Pete Bell's review of it, shall we say.
Aye.
And it kind of feeds into what we've been saying for a while now, mate, that the question of London rule has to be really looked closely at.
Well, I think it's worth telling the listeners that, what she highlighted, Ruth Wishart in The National highlighted, was the fact that this particular government isn't even playing lip service to the devolution agreement. It's simply ignoring the devolved governments, Scotland in particular, various areas, having to put written questions to SAGE when they did attend. There've been no COBRA meetings for a month where they actually get to talk at the table. All these sorts of things.
I think it's clear that Dominic Cummings has no time for devolution. He's not interested.
I don't think he's got time for democracy, Jimmy.
But he's treating it as what it is, mate. We've made this huge thing. We've made a parliament. We've made a parliament that we want to overstep the powers that it's given and actually end the union. But from the English point of view, from the Westminster point of view, devolution's a sideshow. They've given us a little bit of power, but they've retained all the powers that matter. And Dominic Cummings is treating it as a sideshow that he sees it as by just ignoring it.
Well, I think that's the position. They've taken powers that allow them to ignore not only the devolved nations, but the Westminster Parliament.
Yeah.
They're making decisions on things that are a year away, 2 years away. And they're not allowing any discussion or debate about it. So they're effectively a dictatorship at the moment.
Yeah, we have the most centralised rulers in British history in terms of the powers that they've taken to themselves and the emergency powers that they took to themselves. But the powers that they've taken to themselves before, mate, before coronavirus, before these emergency ones, they just decided that election victory in December gave them unlimited power. They're like the Emperor out of bloody Star Wars, unlimited power. Surprised Dominic Cummings isn't trying to electrocute people with his fingers yet. But it is a centralised power grab, and they doubled down on it with emergency powers for coronavirus, because the amount of times I've heard Nicola Sturgeon say we don't want these powers for 1 minute more than we need them. You'll never get a Boris coming out and say that, mate.
Well, I do think that it'll be interesting to see how long they get extended for.
Mm.
If the argument starts, we need these powers in place in case there's a second peak, we need them in power until, let's say, February, March next year, which gives them huge amounts of power over an American deal.
Aye. Well, they
see that happening without going in front of Parliament?
I could see them try to push it through before November, mate, because it looks increasingly like Donald Trump's going to lose that election. And they will not get anything like the deal that they want from Joe Biden. So
no,
the
deal will be like the extradition deal that we have with America. America gets anybody they want, and we don't get anybody we want, unless it suits America to give them to us.
It's why it's a worry that they pushed the farming thing through quite so quickly. I think they could accelerate this hugely, mate, particularly if the numbers in England re-coronavirus start to drop considerably. The upcoming Brexit is a worry. The upcoming Trump defeat, because I still think he didn't have a chance of winning that election anyway, but the way he's handled coronavirus has sealed it for me. I think they'll try and push through a deal this year with this Republican administration.
That's scary.
Because there's profit to be made in it, mate. There's profit to be made in it for the American. Well, most of the profit's going to go to the Yanks, but let's be honest, the disaster capitalists that back the Tories, they'll make fortunes anyway. Because
they are making fortunes.
Aye, the crumbs for the Yankees table are still big crumbs, mate. Particularly when they're only shared out amongst a billionaire elite in London.
Well, yeah, for the sort of 0.5%, they're big crumbs.
Aye.
Anything else struck you today?
I just noticed there that it's a shame Stuart's not, because he does love it when I turn the conversation to football. But do watch this space. That's them just decided that Hearts are definitely relegated. So Hearts will be taking the SPF out of court in the next wee while. So that should prove entertaining.
Well, the other big news is that the anti-fascists have just had one of their number sent to jail.
Oh, how unfortunate for that piddly gentleman.
I've got a wee clip somewhere.
Leonard.
Sky News reporting on this.
Andrew Banks, the man pictured urinating close to the memorial outside Parliament, has been sentenced to 14 days imprisonment. The magistrate said that she accepts Andrew Banks did not intend to urinate on the memorial, but the harm in this case is the public shock and upset. Quotes, "The public have been outraged by what you did," and she sentences 28-year-old Andrew Banks from Essex to 14 days imprisonment.
14 days? That doesn't sound like a first offence.
No, it doesn't, mate. But he'll do a week, it's England. He'll do 7. Still an expensive P, right enough.
Do they not have the same thing as us, that you've got to get so much time before it gets halved?
I don't think they have down there, mate. No.
Oh well, it's a week in the pokey, possibly.
A week in the chokey. Aye, it's a strange thing a really odd thing to do. I'm not being funny, but if he didn't mean to pee on that memorial, as he's walking up to pee there, he can't have not seen it. Eh?
Well, the thing they got, it's in broad daylight, in the middle of a main thoroughfare. He didn't even try and sneak into the gardens or hide behind something.
Aye.
Mind you, he reckons he'd had 16 pints, and we've all been there. So,
if I'd had 16 pints, I wouldn't be peeing against the wall, mate. I'd be leaning on it.
I'd be flying at the bottom of it, maybe. Cuddling the memorial.
Would that be offensive? A drunk Scotsman cuddling a memorial?
Oh, I've no doubt. If it was a Scotsman, then he got a month. That was a joke, folks. That wasn't any anti-English bias. If it'd been a black Scotsman, he would have got a month.
Oh, 3 months hard labour, mate.
Aye. Go and chase those haggis from the hills. Tomorrow, as I said earlier, Stuart is interviewing Deirdre Brock, who's our local MP. So that should be quite interesting. So we'll let you get rested and warmed up for that. Jimmy and I will not be seen in that, although I will be teching it for Stuart. We're not sure that we're going to do a show after it, but we might do, depending on what Deirdre reveals under Stuart's scrutiny.
Dun, dun, dun.
So thanks, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norrie Stuart. And thanks for listening, folks. Hope you enjoyed it today. And I hope you'll join us tomorrow for Deirdre's interview. Cheers for now.